Okay, to continue from the previous tutorial, we are going to be looking at functions in this one, and we have had discussions about functions in the previous programming classes. You studied about functions in your structured programming class. We studied about functions or methods in Python in object-oriented programming, and they are not going to be that much different from the functions of SQL. They carry on the same properties and the same way of doing things. So what are functions here? According to the slide, we are saying that functions are used. Okay, before you can look at what the functions are used for here, let us just make a recap of what a function is. We said in the previous classes, a function, or you can call it a method if you use it in object-oriented programming. This is a group of statements that together perform a particular task, or that together accomplish a given task. So for example, if you want to compute maybe the age, or you want to compute the average of a given set of values, so you can create, because average has different steps that you have to go through. We have to get the numbers, we have to add up the numbers, then you have to divide and get the average, and then we need to return the value. So you can create a function and we call it average, and then within that average function we have a group of statements that together help us to accomplish the computation of average. It could be the computation of any other thing, maybe the CGPA, or to determine the class of a person. Okay, so it could be anything. The important thing here is we have a name. This name is for a group of statements that are together going to be executed to achieve, or to accomplish a single task. So this is the same explanation that we have here, and we are saying that why we need or what functions are used for, particularly in this SQL environment. We are saying that we use them to perform calculations and return only one value. I should remember from the previous classes we had that functions, they should always return a value, and you remember that return keyword. Okay, so you do the computation of the average, you write all the statements, but because the function computes something, then you want to return that value to the person, whoever will be calling this function. And this also brings us to remember one point about functions, that we declare functions, we define them, and then we call the functions. So what do we mean by that? By declaring, we give it a name, that okay, we want to create a group of statements, and they're going to those statements are going to be referred to by this particular name. So we assign a name, and then when we write those statements that we need, for example, the statements that we need to compute the average, we are defining a function. We are giving a body to the function, what it is supposed to be doing. But declaring and defining a function doesn't mean that the function is going to be performing whatever you have designed it to do, not until we perform a call to the function. Let us look at the metaphor of a car, and we relate it to a function. So a car has so many functionalities. If a car can accelerate, a car can stop, okay, it can start the engine, it can accelerate, we have the braking system, it has the air conditioning system, it has so many conditions. It has the radio systems. Some modern cars have internet systems, have sensor systems, have Bluetooth systems. Okay, but let us just focus on the few basic functionalities. Let us look at the starting of the engine, the acceleration, the braking, and the AC. So these are all functions within the car. But when the car is parked there, is it accelerating? Is it started? No. It is designed to be able to start. It is designed to be able to accelerate. It is designed to be able to stop and to have the air conditioning. But all those functions are inbuilt, but they are not operational, not until the driver or any person activates one of those functionalities. So, for example, you want to start a car. The car won't start itself, not until you come and either insert in a key and you turn that key to initiate the functionality of starting the engine. And after starting it, the car will just start to move. but regardless whether it has, even though it has the functionality of acceleration. So it needs the driver to take some effort or to do something. Maybe he inserts in the gear and then he presses on the accelerator pedal. Then the car will start to move. So you're commanding. The functionality is already there, but it needs to be commanded for it to function or for it to be operated. So the car is moving, the car is moving. It won't stop itself. Not until you, the person who wants to stop at that particular moment, you go ahead and press on the brake pedal. So the functionality of braking is already there, but it requires you to need that functionality at that time to activate it, to initiate that functionality. So you go ahead and okay, I need to stop now. Let me press on the brake pedal. Okay, it is too hot. I need to have AC. So you turn on the AC. The functionality is already there, but you need to turn it on. The same thing that I'm trying to say here with functions, that when you build our programs, especially when we're working on functions, we realize that, okay, in our program, we need to have this functionality. We need to be able to compute the age of members, okay? So you write the statements that are required for you to write, to compute the age of members. But that functionality won't be in work or it won't be in use, not until you activate that, okay, now I need to compute the age. That's what we mean by calling a function. Just like you say, okay, now I need to move, then you press on the accelerator pedal. I need to have air within my car, it is too hot. Then you turn on the AC. That's when the functionality of the AC will start to work. So the same thing here, we have our function that we have many functions that perform so many other things. But if we want them to work, we need to call them. Here we call it calling a function to make that function into use, but it is already in existence. So let us proceed. So we say that functions are used to perform calculations and return only one value. So we write a group of statements, but at the end of it, these statements should return one computed value. It is not necessarily it has to be a computed value, but it has to be at least a value, because some other times it could be a string value, it could be any kind of a value that you are returning after the execution of the statements within your function. We are going to see the examples. And then you're saying that they are helpful in performing common computation tasks, like maybe you're determining tasks for best pay, grading students, marks, computing CGPA, computing the total amount on a receipt with a list of goods. Okay, so it depends on what you are trying to do and which kind of value that you want to compute. So you can write a function for that. And the syntax for writing a function is this. We use these two keywords, the create keyword, which you have been using every time you want to create an object. So this time around, you want to create an object named as function. So we use the keyword function, and then we have to give a function name. Just like I said, we have to give a name to the function. And then again, if you remember from the previous knowledge of functions, the concept of parameters also is carried forward to this SQL. So some functions may require some parameters and you can define them, although some functions may not need any parameters. So we leave these brackets empty, but the brackets are a must, these round brackets. And since we say that the function has to return a value, this value has to be of a given data type. So this keyword is important. The returns keyword, it specifies the data type of the value that this function is going to return. For example, as we say that we want to write a function that computes average of a list of numbers. So we look at which kind of value are we going to get at the end of computing average. So you realize that, okay, average is a float value. So meaning that here we're going to say returns float, because we expect the value to be returned by this function to be of a float value. If the value is going to be of an integer, maybe you're computing age, because age is supposed to be a whole number, then we use under the returns, we say we're going to return an integer value, and then within here we return that particular value of integer data type. Okay, so then SQL doesn't use curly brackets, like you used to have in C. Okay, it uses the word begin and end to specify the beginning and the end of the body. So anything that you want to be executed within the function, it has to come in between these two words, the begin and the end. And you can see that we don't terminate this line. Okay, actually this is one single line from here up to here, only that we didn't have enough space here, so it spanned into another line, but it can be only one full line up to this side. So we don't terminate this line because it is just a definition of a definition of a group of statements that we are going to have here. So that's why you see that we only terminate at the end. Although the individual statements that we have within the body of the function, these ones have to be terminated, as we are going to see. So let us look at an example. Okay, so I'm going to clear my interface. I don't need any of this. So let me make a mention of this. You can write a function that just computes anything, okay, whether it is related to our database, whether it is not, as long as in our program we need to perform that computation. Okay, so we are just going to first learn functions generally without attaching them to a database. Okay, we need a database, but they are not going to be related to any table or any other object within our database. Okay, so as we said, we start with the keyword create and then function. Okay, before we could say create database, create table, create view. This time around we are working with functions, so create function. And then what follows next is the name of the function. And as I told you, when you are looking at views, I usually start with, like you see here, a VW as an acronym for view. So likewise here, I always start with fn to show that this is a function. And then I proceed with the name of the function that I want to look at. Okay, so maybe I want to look at a function that computes the age of a person, because we expect that in an information system, we don't ask members for their age, rather we just ask for their date of birth, and then with that value we can compute the age. So we expect that someone just gives us their date, their year of birth or date of birth, and then we use that value to compute the age. So since we are going to be computing age, I find the name of my function to be fn compute age. If you're doing something else, maybe you're computing average, compute average. Or maybe if you're trying to generate unique numbers, you can say generate maybe receipt numbers. You have a function that returns a receipt number every time you're creating a new maybe receipt. Okay, or maybe you're creating a new student and you want to generate an auto reg number. So you can have a function that generate reg number depending on what you're doing. And then as a must, the appearance of these brackets is a must. And if this function computation is dependent on some input, you need some value to be provided for it to compute whatever it computes. So the example here of compute age, we know that we cannot compute age unless someone gives us the date of birth. So date of birth becomes an input, which is a parameter within the function definition. So we have to go ahead and say, okay, we have, we can call it birth date. And since it is a parameter, we need to provide a data type for it. So we can say this is going to be a date variable or parameter. If there are other parameters, we just separate them with a comma and we provide a list. The list is limitless. We don't have any limit to the number of parameters that you can have within the function definition. So we could not have any parameter. We could have one or many parameters depending on the kind of function that you are writing. And then, as we said, we have to specify the data type of the value that is going to be returned by using the returns keyword. Take note of the S, like you are writing English, that okay, this is going to be returning, so it returns this kind of a value which is going to be of an integer, since you are going to be computing age. Okay, because expect age to be whole numbers only. We don't expect someone to have 23.5 years. We just say you're 23. Okay, then after that we use the begin keyword and then the end, meaning that anything that you want within our function body comes in between the begin and the end statement. Now SQL is not okay, particularly this editor, the query browser, it's the one that has this limitation. It doesn't provide us with auto indentation. Okay, and here indentation is not a must in SQL, but it helps us in the readability of our code. It makes the code much readable. So if you care about the readability of your work, then you can go ahead and indent manually. Because if you are going to have statements that are going to be part of this body, why would you have them all starting at the same line? Okay, like this. So it would look nice if you say that, okay, all these are within the body, and you just manually indent them. And if you have any other structure in here, again, you can indent further, as we shall be seeing as we move forward. But this indentation is not a must. Whether you do it or not, your program won't create an error. Okay, but we just do it for the readability of our work. Okay, so then in here we write the statements that are required to perform the computation that we want. We know that to compute age, we need to have the date of birth of the person, which is going to be provided to us when the user calls this function. And then we also need the current year. Okay, we have the current year, and then we use those two values to, so we say the current year minus the year of birth, then we get the age of a person. So since I'm going to have age computation, so I can define a variable here that is going to hold the computed value of age, and I say age equals to that. So here we requested for a date, and date has three values. It has the day, it has the month, and it has the year. So if you want, you can go ahead and just subscript out the year from this value. Okay, and then we use it with the current year. Or we can just use the whole value, since we have some function, a date function in SQL that gives us the difference between any 2 days. It returns the number of days, yes, between any two dates. And I think that's what we are going to be using. Okay. But if we need to make it easier, let us just say we have a function which is year. It picks out the year value from a date. So if someone provides us that, okay, I was born on 23rd of February, 2021, then this value here, it will just return for me only the value 2021. So I can say year, and then I pass in the date value, which is the birth date. So I say birth date. So this will just return only the year value from this birth date the person will provide us. And then obviously we shall just say, since this is 2021, you can just do something like that. So 2021, which is the current year, minus the year of the birth date of the person that we are computing the age for. And then after the computation, you can just say return. Now this is the return value that you want to return at the end of the computation of the value. So we want to return the computed age. So this is our computation. It is only one statement now, but it could be some multiple statements that are written up here just to come up with the final value, and the return word has to be at the end of the function body, just like we saw with Python when you're working with methods, that this return keyword has to be at the end. This is just to indicate that this is the end of the body, but this is the last statement that we have in here. And don't forget, these statements have to be terminated, each one of them. Okay, you have to terminate the body. The video is getting long. Let me stop it here, and then we proceed in the next one.